Well, let's bring you today's perspective. And joining us now on the programme is US domestic and foreign policy specialist Laurie Dundon. She's covered transatlantic security issues across the Atlantic for nearly 2 decades. Great to have you with us on the programme today. Polls then, we've already seen 6 people voting in Dixville Knott, but the main one's opening in an hour or so's time. It's a nervous moment, isn't it?
It's an incredibly nervous moment because, as you've heard, today, yesterday, and for now weeks leading up to, it is too close to call. And, we can run poll numbers back and forth, but everything's coming up within margin of errors. And we just need to see who maybe the silent majority of voters are. That plus voter turnout and voter engagement, which have both been priorities, for both parties. They've thrown a lot of money into that. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, too close to call, but also too close to call with 2 candidates who are diametrically opposed to each other.
Absolutely. And their closing arguments, you could say, of the campaign couldn't be different in terms of tone and not just, topics, but tone. Trump very much focused on the security, stability, fear, and I can fix it. I alone can fix it. But that's because everything's gone wrong. So the country's on the wrong track. And watch out, fear's coming. He just kept hitting that over and over. Harris really kind of reached the end of, let's say, a 90-day sprint, which is a very, very rapid period to kind of get your rhythm on the road, get your campaign message honed. And she did finish that up with I'm going to unify the country. I'm going to work on all these problems in detail. She talked about bringing in Republican members to her cabinet. She's really trying to reach out. That came through at the end. Let's see how many people that message broke through to.
Let's talk about some of the policy issues. I mean, for people voting in the US, the 2 big issues that we keep hearing them refer to are the economy, of course, and also abortion. How important do you think both of those issues are to the electorate and to this election?
Absolutely key. There's a reason those 2 keep coming up. The economy, you'll hear a lot of statistics today and in the days ahead. It will be true insight into what Americans are thinking about the economy, because a number of people are responding to conversations, anecdotal and or polls saying, I don't like Trump, but I'm looking for something else as an alternative that will fix the economy. One of the problems about all the economic numbers we're seeing is there may be an uptick statistically in what the positive direction the economy is going in, but it doesn't feel like that. And it didn't feel like that for the last 4 years when the messaging out of the Biden White House was, don't worry, it's not so bad. It's like when you go to the doctor, the first thing you say when your arm's hurting and the doctor says, no, it isn't. That's not what you want to hear. And people may or may not have that confidence in Harris because of their just general discord with that response messaging by Biden over the last couple of years. Abortion, absolutely key. Bringing out the women's vote, that we've heard a lot about the gender gap in voting. All sorts of constituencies, whether that be college-educated women, non-college-educated women. You can break this down by all sorts of categories and groups, suburban, urban, rural, different parts of the country. The women's vote is showing overwhelmingly to be determined by or influenced greatly by the abortion debate. That's the reversal in 2020 of the long-standing law of the land of the woman's right to choose. That issue is also pivotal. It's showing in the gender gap in young voters. And with young voters, we have to see how many turn out, because there's a lot of attention being put on Gen Z voters. And the problem is it gets kind of complicated for them. Where do you register? Do I register at university? Where do I show up? All this type of things. So let's see where the gender gap around abortion actually converts to votes.
Yeah, a lot of hope amongst the Harris campaign over the last few days, because it does appear, doesn't it, that a lot of women are turning out to vote. She's really going to have to thank the women of the US if she wins.
Absolutely. No, that a lot of this is going to be day after, actually weeks after and months after, looking back at where turnout came. And that's why there's been a very strong push the last few weeks on turnout.
What about foreign policy? I mean, is it almost forgotten amid this election in the US?
Traditionally, voters don't vote based on foreign policy. Even when we were in the years of contentious war in Iraq, when this was top of the newspaper headlines, it wasn't the dominant issue for voters. There will be certainly huge consequences depending on who gets elected for foreign policy. So whether you're looking at that from inside the U.S. or from outside, look at key issues like Ukraine, where Trump has said, we will stop paying for the security of Europe. We will stop paying for support to Ukraine. Now, that may take about a year to drag into implementation, but he's serious. He's serious about pulling out of NATO. Look at complicated issues like the Middle East. That's a little bit more nuanced in terms of how both sides, either candidate would need to go forward. But again, expect drastically different policies. And if you're sitting in Europe, not only should you be concerned about transatlantic security issues or the U.S. commitment to Europe, but expect a tariff trade war to come almost immediately. The confrontation under Trump, that would be under Trump, confrontation under Trump would be the tone of the day.
Why do US voters not care about those things? Because, Ukraine is going to first influence the people of Ukraine and what happens there, but it also, longer term, of course, also influences people in the US too.
Prioritization. Right now, people are hurting. They have seen prices and inflation rise, the difficulty buying a home, all the conversation about when you go to the grocery store. Right now, it's we want to help Ukraine, but right now I need to focus at home. I've heard comments, what could we do with the amount of money, the billions of dollars going into support for Ukraine? Foreign policy-wise, excellent. Values, American interests abroad, absolutely. But is that where Americans want that money to be spent? And those type of questions usually fall secondary to their immediate bread and butter needs.
This time tomorrow, we may not, of course, know the complete result of the election. We will probably certainly know whether it is as incredibly close as the polls have predicted. What comes next, do you think, after that?
Watch the states. Watch the individual states. There's a lot of talk about 7 swing states. I think we might be down to 5. Arizona seems more locked in, and North Carolina, hard to tell, but possibly more locked in. So there'll be attention on the swing states in particular. A lot of work has been done by both parties to prep, to defend legally, or to contest legally, the counting, the absentee ballots coming in, the verification process, the voter signature verification interpretation, all of that. Expect questions to come up almost immediately unless you see significant wins. You still may see contested challenges in the courts. The Trump team did last time, but they were thrown out over time due to lack of evidence, and it didn't really slow down Joe Biden getting into office. So in the first weeks, watch for process contention. And watch what happens, maybe not just at the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C., but at state capitals. There is serious concern about security threats to state election officials, protests that could be organized in front of state capitals. I would focus our attention there.
So you fear there could be violence?
Could be. I mean, we didn't expect January 6th, 2021 to happen. We were shocked. It happens fast. And there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of disgruntlement, and that's real in the U.S. When people say, how can people vote for Trump when they don't like his character? People aren't happy. And whoever the next president is, they're going to have to very much focus on delivering.
Good to analyse it all with you. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today. Laurie Dundon, who's a US domestic and foreign policy specialist. Thanks very much once again. And of course, full coverage of the US election, all the results as they come in here on France 24. Our special coverage begins at 7 p.m. Paris time this evening. That's 1 o'clock lunchtime in Washington, and goes on for, 12, 24 hours. Who knows? We shall see how long, of course, we need to continue that special coverage throughout the day here on France 24. Stay with us for that, of course.